Good morning. So today's Daf Yomi is Megillah Daf Kafches, Megillah 28. And the Daf Yomi tells us we're going to start on the bottom of 27b, 3 lines from the bottom. Shalu Talmidav Rabbi Eliezer ben Shemua. So the students asked Rabbi Eliezer ben Shemua, how do you live a long life? What's the key to you living a long life? Amar Lahem, he said to them, what was the key to living a long life? He said, Miyamai lo asisi kapandaria I never made the synagogue a kapandaria. What is that? That is a shortcut. Means say I never use the synagogue as just a way to cut through. I never did that. Pasati arosh am kadosh. And I never walked over the people, the students who are, let's say, sitting on the floor, and he never walked above them to get to his place. V'lo nasati kapai v'lo bracha. I never did the birkas kohanim, never lifted up my hands to do the birkas kohanim without reciting a blessing. You need to recite a blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu b'cholam asher kedishanu b'kedushaso shel Aaron. That you sanctified us with the holiness of Aaron. This reminds me of the Gemara that says that you always have to say a blessing before you study Torah, because otherwise you make the Torah like, God forbid, like just a regular subject, like any other subject. So to a blessing with the Kohanim, if you give this blessing without doing a bracha beforehand, it's like the blessing chas v'shalom is coming from you and not from God. So you always made that point clear. So Rabbi Preda. So the students asked Rabbi Preda, what did you merit to live a long life? And he says, nobody ever got to yeshiva before me in the morning. But wait, before we turn the page to the top of 28a, Toso says there's a tremendous question, because we know that from the Gemara in Eruvin, it tells us that Rabbi Preda got a long life because he taught his student 400 times the same blood of Gemara. And the heavenly voice went out and said, what do you want? Do you want a long life for the whole world, or do you want to go to the world to come, or do you want to live a long life in this world? And Hashem Yisbarach said, give him both. So we see from here that's why he lived a long life. So it's not because that he was the first of the base medrash. So the Tosfos answers, at first they asked him, and that was the answer he gave. He said, I must be because I came first of the base medrash. But in the end, they saw, no, you lived a really long life. So that must be because you taught the student 400 times. So we see from here that the more you give, you don't lose. The person who gave to his student more than anything in the world, he gave 400 times, he didn't lose anything. He lived a long life. The more you give to others, the more you live. So now we're on the top of Kafches Amud 28a, and he says, "V'lo barachti lifnei Kohen." He said, I never made my blessing when I did the zimun or a bracha. Rashi says in the meal, I never took precedence over the Kohen. And I never ate from an animal where the parts were not given to the Kohen. There's a mitzvah to give to the Matnos Kahuna, to give the Zroa, the L'chaim, and the Keva, the forearm, the L'chaim, or the jaws. Like today is the tongue, people eat tongue, and the Keva, on the stomach. So you have to give to a Kohen. He said, I never ate from an animal that they didn't first give those parts to the Kohen. You're not allowed to eat from an animal that you have not first taken these parts and given them to the Kohen. And he said, Rabbi Yitzchak said, whoever eats from an animal that you first didn't give the parts to the Kohen, it's like you're eating tevel. What's tevel? Tevel is you're eating food that was not, the truma and meiser were not separated from it. And so here we're saying so too here, that if you eat from this animal, he's applying that same din to here, that if you eat from the animal that you first didn't separate its that gives to the Kohen, it's like you're eating tevel. But the halacha is not like him, because we don't actually rule like that. We don't say that if you eat from an animal which you didn't give the choice, these parts to the Kohen, that it's like you're eating tevel. We don't say it's as strict as that. And so now the Gemara first analyzes what Rabbi Preda said. He said, I never gave the bracha. I never took precedence over the Kohen to give the bracha. before a Kohen when there was a Kohen present. You mean to say that that's a good thing? That's a good thing that he never gave the precedence over the Kohen? That's not a good thing. I feel Kohen Gadol, Amma Aretz, also Talmud Chacham Chayiv Misa. If there's any Torah scholar, he lets somebody who's an Amma Aretz, somebody who's not learned, give the bracha for everybody over him. Even if that person that Amma Aretz is a Kohen Gadol, he's doing a terrible thing and he's liable for death. As it states, Kol Misanai Vumav. That's all those who hate me love death, as it says in Proverbs chapter 8. And Al Tikri Misanai Elamasni, I don't read at those who hate me, but those who cause me to be hated. So we see from here that it's a terrible thing, that because Rashi says that if you're going to see that people are that people are going to see the Torah scholars is treated in this terrible way or disrespectful way, they're going to say this is not the way of Hashem. And so therefore, Rashi says, you're causing people to hate God. People see a Torah scholar treated disrespectfully before the unlearned. Omar ein nachas ruach b'Torah. They'll say, look, the path of the Torah is not pleasant. So how could he allow this Kohen Gadol to make the bracha before him? And for sure, how could he attribute it to a long life? Gemara says, no, kika amar iu b'shavin. No, and he said he never took the bracha before a Kohen. That's when they were equal. When they were equal, he always let the Kohen go first. But if he was greater, he took the bracha before the Kohen.
Equal in terms of what?
The question here is equal in terms of what? Equal in terms of righteousness, or you're right, it's a good question. Is it equal in terms of Torah knowledge or equal in terms of righteousness? It's a good question. I have to look into that. Very good. So Shaul Talmid of Rabbi Nechanya ben Akana. So now we're after Rabbi Nechanya ben Akana. They want to know about how did you live such a long life? He said, I never took honor with the shame of my friend. Velo also almitasi kilas chaverai. And when I went to sleep at night, I never went to sleep with my friend being cursed. Meaning to say, I always forgave my friend before I went to sleep at night. And also, vatram b'mamoni hayisi. I was free with my money. I wasn't stingy. I was generous. I gave people big tips. I gave freely to help others. What does it mean? Because what does it mean? I never took honor with the shame of my friend. Like one time, what happened to Rav Huna during Mariakasa? He was carrying this garden hoe on his shoulder. Also, Rav Chana bar Chanilai v'kadar minei. So Rav Chana bar Chanilai came and he tried to carry it. Amalei iragilas the daris b'maseich daris. So Rav Huna said to him, if you typically carry this in your town, carry it. Below isyakuri ana v'ilo isyakuri ana b'zilu. He says, but if you don't typically carry this garden hoe, I'm not going to make myself honor at your expense. And so therefore, he didn't allow it. And what does it mean? Below all mitasi kilas chaverai. I never let the go up on my bed the curse of my friend. Like Marzutra said, when he would go to bed at night, he'd say, I forgive all those who are harassing me. I was free with my money. The Amar Mar, as we learned, Eov is a very strange. I don't remember other cases where we prove the way to act from Eov, but this is what they say. Eov was very free with his money. Eov always left the tip to the shopkeeper from his own money. So Shaul Rabbi Akiva, as Rabbi Nechanya Gadol b'Marach Liyam. Now Rabbi Akiva says, how did you live such a long life? Asu Gavizi. So the servants of Nechemia came, become Machule, and they smacked Rabbi Akiva because they thought that he was trying to give him an ayin hara, and he's asking this question. So yes, so now it's very interesting. A very interesting thing happened. Salak Yasav Areisha de Dikla. Rabbi Akiva quickly ran up a palm tree. Palm tree is significant. Some say it was Tzadika Tamar Yifrach. It's a righteous one. It's like a palm tree. Amalei Rebbe, he said no. In Nemar, he asked him a different question. In Never Keves, it says in the Torah. If it says in the Torah, as a keves achat taseh b'boker, as a keves hasheni taseh b'arbaim, you have to bring one sheep in the morning and one sheep in the afternoon. But if it says keves, it's singular. So why does it have to say, since it says keves? What does it have to one? Keves means one. So Amar Lahu. So Rabbi Nechunya says, he says, oh, he's a young Torah scholar. Shavku, let him go. Maybe they didn't know who Rabbi Akiva was. Remember, Rabbi Akiva was about tshuva. So this might have been at the part where he was coming back to the faith. So he was learning about it. So he said, look, no, I'm really studying Torah. So they said to him, so Rabbi Nechunya answered him, he was the special one of the flock, meaning give the best sheep of the flock. Amarle miyamai lo kibalti matanos v'lo amadati al midosai. So Rabbi Nechemia said, now if you want to answer your question, how come I lived a long life? Because I never accepted gifts, and I never was always looking for justice to somebody who afflicted me. And vatram b'mamoni ayisi. I was also very free with my money. I shared my money. I wasn't stingy with my money. So that's what he says. So what does it mean? Loki balti matanos. What does it mean when Rabbi Akiva says I never? That Rabbi Nechemia says I never got accepted gifts. Ki had Rabbi Lazar ki avim mishadro matanos v'bein nesiya. Like Rabbi Lazar when he used to send him gifts from the Nasi's house, lo avashakil. He wouldn't take the gifts. Ki avim mizam nile lo aviyaza. When they invited him, he wouldn't go. Amar lahu lo nichu l'chu de'achya. Rabbi Elazar said to the Nasi, why you keep inviting me and sending me gifts? Don't you want me to live? It says in Mishlei, the one who hates gifts will live. He says, I don't want your gifts. If I accept your gift, my life will be short. So therefore, Rabbi Nechunya was careful about that. He didn't accept the gifts. Rabbi Zera, but I see a different shot. Rabbi Zera, when they sent him gifts, or they sent him an invitation from the Nasi's house, when they sent him gifts, he wouldn't accept it. But when they would invite him, he went. He said, they're going to be honored by my coming. So it's not for me, it's for them. So therefore I can go. And what does it mean when Rabbi Nechemia says, I was never too exact with my actions? What does that mean? What does that mean? So he says it means as follows. He says it means so whoever is not so exacting to make sure that whoever does something wrong to him, he pays him back exactly the same way. Then God will be mavir on his sins, because we've all done something wrong. So the same way we have to be forgiving, we want God to be forgiving of us, we should be forgiving to others. As it says, no se'avon v'avor pesha. He bears iniquity and he overlooks the sin. When me no say avon, to whom does God bear their sin? When me shall bear al pesha. And somebody who himself gives off sin, gives off and lets it go. Shal Rabbi asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. We know from the Gemara in Shavuos, Rashi writes in Shavuos Davav that Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha was the son of Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva was called Karcha because he was bold. So that's one. It was a dispute amongst the Rishonim whether or not that's really the case, because Rabbeinu Tam there says no, that's disrespectful to call Rabbi Akiva old baldy. So, but that's a dispute. So Rabbi asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, how did you live such a long life? Amrlo katzta b'chayai. He says the same thing. You're trying to kill me? Rabbi, no. Rabbi says Torah. I need to know. I need to know the secret to life. He says, I never stared, not that I didn't glance, but I never stared at the face of a wicked man. I think I interpret this to mean that I never was like fawning over a wicked person. When you stare at a person like you're in awe, like you see the paparazzi, you see they take the pictures of the people who are the stars. He says, if there was a wicked person, I don't care that they were a star or this or that. I was not interested in that. Tam Rabbi Yochanan Asar Adam L'stakel B'Tsalm Masadam. A person is not allowed to B'Tsalm Masadam Rasha. A person is not allowed to stare at the appearance of a wicked man, as it states. It states in Malachim Beis, chapter 3, verse 14. Rabbi Elazar says, "Ein of kos." He says, somebody who looks at the face of a wicked person, his eyes will grow dim, as it states, and when Yitzchak grew older, his eyes grew dim. Why? Because from the actual word meiraos, his eyes grew dim from seeing. We learn out from here, because he looked at somebody, his eyes grew dim. Who did he look at? Because he looked at the wicked Esav. Gemara says, is this what caused Yitzchak's eyes to grow dim? Don't let the curse of a hedjot be of a commoner be light in your eyes. Don't take it frivolously. Avimelech cursed Sarah, and as a result of this, this curse, he cursed Sarah that her eyes should grow dim, and this was upheld in her descendants, as it states. Because Avimelech says, "Behold, he will be for you a ksus einayim." I'll decree ksus el kisias einayim, that he cursed Sarah that she will not be able to see, and from this curse, Yitzchak's eyes became dim. So we see that Yitzchak's eyes did not become dim from staring at Esav, but from staring at from the curse of Avimelech. So the Gemara says, both things caused his eyes to go dim. Both that staring at Esav and also from the curse of Avimelech. And when I was younger, my Rebbe in first grade told me at the Midrash that also one of the tears of the angel's eyes dropped in Yitzchak's. One of the tears from the angel dropped in Yitzchak's eyes, and that caused him to go blind. Rava Amar Me'acha. Rava says, no, we know the face of a wicked person from here, because it states Se'es Pnei Rasha Lo Tov. The one who looks at the face of the wicked is not good. B'shas P'tira. So when Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha died, Amar Lo. So Rabbi said to Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, Rabbi Baracheni, give me a bracha. Amar Lo Yiratzon Shetagia L'Chatzi Yama. He said, I bless you that you come to half my life. That's what he said. I bless you that you come to half my life. So Rabbi said to him, oh, cool. Oh, well, you don't want to give me a bracha to reach your whole life? There's a great bracha. Amar lo, haba macharecha behema yiru. Because you want your children, he says, to be shepherds, meaning to say your children are waiting for your job. Your children, your Rebbe, your children are going to take over. Right? And they can't do it while you're still alive. So I'm giving you a bracha that your children will get your job. That's what he says. Like the Queen of England, she's still alive. The poor son, he's 70 years old. He can't be the king. One of them said, I'm going to have a share in the world to come. The lowest Stakli, the guy. He said, I never was staring at a guy. He said, I never made a partnership with this guy. So the students asked Rabbi Zera, how did you live a long life? He said, I never lost my temper and never became like too vigilant in my house. And I never walked in front of somebody who was greater than me. Below her hearty. I never thought of Torah in a place where I'm not allowed to think of Torah. I never walked 4 cubits without Torah tefillin. I never slept in the base of Medrash, not temporary, not permanent, not temporary. I never rejoiced in the downfall of my friend. Some say it means when my friend was in pain, I was never happy. Meaning, say, what kind of jerk would be happy with his friend's downfall? But it means, no, not that you weren't happy with your friend's downfall, that you were never happy while your friend was in pain.
There's a whole word for that in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Schadenfreude.
And I they say, I read in Rabbi Tuishkin's book about the Lubavitcher Rebbe that there was a student he had, and the student became, he left the path of Chabad, and he was actually doing things that were so upsetting to the Rebbe. But the Rebbe told his, and I confirmed this with the Shliach son. The Rebbe told the Shliach son, he said, how's our friend doing this down? And he said, I don't know. He said, stop what you're doing right now. Go right there to him and bring him money because he's poor and he needs our help. So, and I never called my friend by a nickname. The Amrila, and some say, I never even called him by his family's name, meaning to say, even by the family name, I always called him with respect. So we're up to the Mishnah. So Rabbi Yehuda had said in the previous page that you're allowed to sell a synagogue to be a courtyard. And Rabbi Yehuda also said, Beis HaKnesses Shecharav, the Beis HaKnesses, even though it's been destroyed, a synagogue that's been destroyed, Ein Maspidim B'Socho. We don't, it still has its holiness, and therefore we're not supposed to eulogize in it. Ein Mafshilin B'Socho Chavalim, and we're not supposed to like weave threads in there. Ve'in Porsin L'Socho Mitzudos. We don't use it as a warehouse to make the traps. We don't dry out fruit on it. And we don't turn it into a shortcut, as it states, I will make your temple desolate. And the reason why it doesn't say Ashomeim means to say Kedusha Son, Afkashain Shomin, that they retain their holiness even while they are desolate. But let's say in this place where the synagogue used to be, grass grew there. Well, Yitlosh, don't uproot it in the Agmas Nefesh, because you want to feel the pain of what's happened to there, so that you should remember the time when it was built, and you should pray to Hashem for mercy that it should be rebuilt. Tan Rabbanan Be'atei Kinasios Noagim Ben Kos Rosh. In a synagogue, you're not allowed to act with frivolity. Ain't Ochem Ben, you're not allowed to eat in the synagogue. Ain't Shosim Ben, you're not allowed to drink in the synagogue. They meet with somebody, you're not allowed to like put on your makeup there. They Thailand bag, you're not allowed to use it for you're not allowed to use it to go like for exercise, basically. Or you're not allowed to go in, you're not allowed to enter it into the summer just for the air conditioning, or in the winter for the heat. And you're not allowed to do eulogizing there for an individual. Of a Koran Ben, what are you supposed to do in the synagogue? Tell you what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to study Torah. Rishonim Ben, you're supposed to study Talmud. Who must be the man has Rabbim. And if there's a eulogy for a great Torah scholar, that you could do in there. But for anybody else, you're not supposed to. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Eimasai, when do we allow this? That you're not allowed to. When do we strive that should not be these things in the synagogue? Be Yeshuvan. That's when do we say that there can't be any grass growing in the synagogue? Like the synagogues, I guess, were town squares back then. They weren't always buildings. So when do they do this? When they're settled. But when the synagogue was destroyed, we allow the grass to grow up in it. So that, we want the people to be in distress, so they pray to God. So the Gemara says, why is Rabbi Yehuda mentioning Asavim all of a sudden? So the Gemara says, this is the Mishnah was missing words, and the Bryce was missing words, and we have to correct it. We clean the synagogues. We pour water there so that it doesn't have dust, so that there be no grass growing up. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, when do we do this? Be Yeshuvan, when they're settled, but when they're in their destructive place, when they're destroyed, we leave the grass to go up. And when the grass goes up, well, Yitlosh, don't tear out the grass with Agmas Nefesh, because we want to be in distress so we can pray to Hashem. Ravasi says all the synagogues in Babylon were built on a stipulation that you can use them for whatever you need, and so therefore you can eat and drink in them, and you can do the other things. Nevertheless, still can't do frivolous things in there. What are the frivolous things? Cheshbonos. Don't go to synagogue to do business. Don't go to synagogue to do business. Ravasi says if there's a synagogue where they go to synagogue and they talk and they do business, that in that place they're going to have a dead body left overnight. Meaning to say, well, first the Gemara understands you need to leave over a dead body. So the Gemara says, you're supposed to leave a dead body there. No, meaning to say, are you gonna do that? That you're obligated to leave a dead body there? The Gemara says, no. Ella was so. If you're going to have a synagogue where you're talking business there, in the end, what's going to happen is the synagogues become a morgue for abandoned bodies, and that's what's going to happen. And so it's a tremendous warning to people not to do that.
Because it says if you're sitting around the shul talking nonsense, learning, and if you're not learning, talking nonsense, it's like
because exactly the point. Because a synagogue is a place where if Hashem comes, as Ramaya points out, Hashem comes and he finds 10 people there studying Torah and davening, then Hashem's presence is there. And Chas v'shalom, Hashem comes to our home, to our synagogue, where we're inviting in Hashem, and Hashem sees us not doing things that we're supposed to be doing. This is the curse that the Gemara says. Says the Bryce
what about
the synagogue. Yes.
Yeah, what about this eating or whatever? Like we had food or whatever.
So you're doing. He said in Babylon you do it on a Tanai, that you're allowed to do it for the purpose of a mitzvah. That if it's on a Tanai, when you built it with that stipulation, then it's okay. But still, you shouldn't act things of frivolity in there. Shouldn't be frivolous. But like a Super Bowl party. But if you build it on a stipulation, then you can use it. You can eat there if you have to. Like you could have a dish, you can have stuff in there that you need to do, because that's a mitzvah, and you have no choice. You have no purpose. You don't have the space otherwise. So you build it with that intent in mind. So says the Gemara, you're not allowed to adorn yourself in it. The scholars and their students are permitted to do that. Why do they call it yeshiva? Why do they base medrash? Why do they call it the house of the rabbis? Base of the rabbanon, because it's the house of the rabbis. So the rabbis are allowed to do their activities in there that they usually do in their house. You don't enter in the summer on account of the heat, or the winter on account of the rain. They were standing up to ask the question from Rava. Also, Zilcha de Mitra. It started to rain. They went into this shul. Mitra. So those were there. So they said, aren't you coming in because of the rain? So they said no. So they said no. No, because Biyoma de Istina. And he said no, because we need, in order to learn, we need to have a clear mind, like a day where there's like the northern wind, and we can't have a clear mind, and we can't pray, and we can't study when in this difficult conditions. Let's say you need to call somebody out of the shul. What do you do? If he's a young Torah scholar, he should say halacha. Go in there, say the halacha, and then call out the person. If he's a Tana, go in there, say a Mishnah, and then call out the person. You shouldn't just go into the synagogue, get your friend, and come out. Vikaru, and if he knows psukim, let him say a verse. Vilo, if he doesn't know anything, if he doesn't know anything, he should say to the child, tell me a verse, and the child should say it. Or else he should sit for a minute and then call the person out and then get up. But when you go into a shul, for even if just to get your coat, you always have to do something. You can't just, it's not a regular room. Says the Gemara, must be
that's the last thing you do after when you leave the shul. You should take a seat for
just one more second. Always take a seat in the shul. Who must be them by end as b'charabim, you give a eulogy, or only if it's the eulogy for a person who was a great person in the community. Hechi dami hespide de rabim. What's this called? Machve Rav Chisda could go and hespide de kai be Rav Sheshes, like they would do the eulogy for Rav Sheshes if he will die. Machve Rav Sheshes could go and hespide de kai be Rav Chisda. He says no, like the eulogy they would give for Rav Chisda if he would die. So Rafam Aspadal Akalta Bebei Kanishta. Rafam eulogized his bride his daughter-in-law in the synagogue. Amar Misham Yikara Didiu Udamisa Asakula Alma. Because of my honor and because of the honor for the dead, everybody's going to come to eulogize, and so therefore it's considered a eulogy for the community, and that you could do it. Rabbi Zera Sapte Ume or Rabbanim Bekanishta. Rabbi Zera eulogized one of the rabbis in the synagogue. Amar Misham Yikara Didi Misham Yikara Didei. The Misu Asakol Yam. He said everybody's going to come because it's a great honor. Rish Lakish Sapte Lutzer Ume Rabbanim Dishliach Ba'ar Yisrael. Rish Lakish eulogized one of the rabbis who used to come in the land of Israel. He taught Mishnayos to 24 rows of students. He said, whoa, the land of Israel was lost such a great man. There was a man in Babylon. Sifra v'sifri v'tosefta ushachiv. So, but if there would be a man in Babylon, said Rish Lakish, hold on one second. Somebody trying to say something? Okay, but if there would be a man in Babylon who would know all the halachos, the mishnayos, the midrash halachos, the tosefta, ushachim, and he would die. Also, the Amar Rav Nachman. So there was this person who they came to Rav Nachman and they said, Lispedei Mar, can you give him a eulogy? So what did Rav Nachman say? Rav Nachman said, Hechi Lispedei. Hi, Tzana Demali Sifra de Chaser. He's like a basket filled with books, and just like the basket doesn't understand what's written in the books, so to this person, even though he learned a lot, he doesn't understand it. And so therefore, so he said, how can I eulogize him? So Rish Lakish in the land of Israel gave a beautiful eulogy, but Rav Nachman wasn't impressed by the person that the person knew anything. He said he's like a basket filled with books, just like the basket doesn't know the book. Well, really, what's in the books? He wasn't impressed. So the Gemara says, "Tachazi ma bein takife da'ari Yisrael l'chasidei Bavel." Go look and see what's the difference between the Torah scholars of the land of Israel and the pious people of Bavel. So Rish Lakish, even though he was one of the greatest of Eretz Yisrael, nevertheless, he was so humble and he eulogized his Torah scholar. Whereas Rav Nachman, who was one of the pious people of Bavel, he didn't want to eulogize this Torah scholar because he said this Torah scholar really, he had the baskets, but he didn't serve Torah scholars properly. So he said, we're not going to eulogize it. And then I just, hold on one second. Okay, so hold on one second. Let me just stop and I'll answer some questions.